You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So the U.S. Appeals Court, they refuse to end the CDC's eviction moratorium. Got this little eviction moratorium that's been going on since like last September, coming up on a year. Whew, this thing is just not going to end, is it? That's what we're talking about today. We've got yet another group filing yet another lawsuit, trying to get this moratorium overturned. That's what we're talking about here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. If you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, and I read the news that reasonable people enjoy hearing. That's what we're doing. All right, let's get into it. U.S. Appeals Court refuses to end the CDC eviction moratorium. Is this ever going to end? Doesn't feel like it, does it? Federal Appeals Court on Friday said a pause on evictions designed to curb the spread of the coronavirus can remain in place for now, setting up a battle before the nation's highest court. This has been the most ridiculous thing. This has been one of the most ridiculous things ever. A 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia rejected a bid by Alabama and Georgia landlords to block the eviction moratorium, reinstated by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention earlier this month. So we had, at the end of July, that was going to be just gone. President Biden basically said, you know what, our hands are tied. We can't really do anything. Maybe Congress can do a little something. And he came right out and said, yeah, so CDC is, they're gonna issue an extension of this eviction moratorium, but it may not be legal. Yeah, he came right out and said that because it's probably not. But you got to go through the court process to get there, to get a ruling. In the meantime, landlords not collecting rent from a bunch of tenants. Just this disaster, just this ongoing train wreck. The landlords filed an emergency motion hours later with the Supreme Court, urging the justices to allow evictions to proceed. Supreme Court voted 5-4 in June to allow the moratorium to continue through the end of July. But Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who joined the majority, warned the administration not to act further without explicit congressional approval. Okay. You need Congress to do something here, and that's not going to happen. So then we've got this CDC moratorium, and it's like, what? Does that even count? Since when do they get to pull this stuff? Well, since apparently 2021. As 5 members of this court indicated less than 2 months ago, Congress never gave the CDC the staggering amount of power it claims. Attorneys for the landlords told the Supreme Court on Friday. In a short written decision, the appeals court panel said the court had rejected a similar bid, and a lower court also had declined to overturn the moratorium. In view of that decision, and on the record before us, we likewise denied the emergency motion directed to this court, the judges said in the ruling. We deny the emergency motion directed at this court, because they're basically saying, hey, look what we said. We're not doing anything here. The Biden administration allowed an earlier moratorium to lapse on July 31st, saying it had no legal authority to allow it to continue. But the CDC, they got a little pressure. They issued a new moratorium days later as pressure mounted from lawmakers sleeping on the steps of the Capitol and others to help vulnerable renters stay. How about some vulnerable landlords? What about that? What about landlords who lost their jobs? What about landlords who lost their jobs? How about that? How about that? We don't want them to become homeless and maybe the income that they're depending upon to live. We just don't really ever bring up that side of the equation, do we? No, we don't. It's just this one-sided deal. So we don't want, and others to help vulnerable renters stay in their homes as the coronavirus Delta variant surged. You know, it's funny here in the state of Washington, fentanyl drug overdoses are literally killing more people than COVID is right now. It's interesting, but we don't seem to be holding eviction moratoriums up for that, do we? No, we don't. The moratorium is scheduled to expire October 3rd. And basically what's going on is that this is a play to create some more time in between when that last eviction moratorium went, which was July 31st, to when the federal government can get some more of the Fed money into the hands of the states and the local governments, and when those states and local governments can actually start dispersing the money to the landlords and to the tenants who will hopefully pay the landlords. So tenants can go in and ask for money. Landlords, they need to have everything kind of lined up with their tenants to make that happen. If tenants no longer communicate with the landlords, you can't make it happen. If tenants no longer live in the properties, you can't make that happen. It's a whole bunch of criteria, and I don't see a ton more money being doled out between now and October 3rd, because October 3rd is coming right up. I mean, we are not that far away from that. So if we have another moratorium come up October 3rd, there are going to be fireworks. As of August 2nd, roughly 3.5 million people in the United States said they had faced eviction in the next 2 months, according to the Census Bureau's Household Pulse survey. The new moratorium temporarily halted evictions in counties with substantial and high levels of virus transmission and would cover areas where 90% of the population lives. So it was specific, and yet it covered 9 out of 10 people, right? 90% of the U.S. population. 90%. Now, how can we make this a different moratorium than the last one, but still have it cover everybody and make everybody feel warm and fuzzy? Well, this is literally what they did. The Trump administration initially put a nationwide eviction moratorium in place last year out of fear that people who can't pay their rent would end up in crowded living conditions like homeless shelters and help spread the virus. So what's been interesting is that I've covered the homeless situation quite a bit here in Seattle, and how few cases of coronavirus have come out of the homeless shelters, have come out of the homeless communities living in parks. Why is that? Well, because they're living outside. They're living outside. So this whole thing is just so backwards, isn't it? It's like, okay, but yeah, they're not getting it outside. So they're living in tents. They've got good airflow. I mean, this whole thing is just, it's so ridiculous. And yeah, we just kind of keep going, oh, okay, moratorium. Oh, yeah, all right. Landlords are pissed because they have every right to be. At some point in time, you got to rip off that Band-Aid. That's been a while ago. President Joe Biden acknowledged there were questions about the legality of the new eviction freeze, but he said a court fight over the new order would buy time for the distribution of some of more than $45 billion. We got $45 billion. I think it's $46 billion. $46.5 billion, is that right? Or $45.5 billion, something like that. And they always round up. And rental assistance have been approved, but not yet used. In urging the appeals court to keep the ban in place, the Biden administration noted that the new moratorium was more targeted, yet still covered 90% of the population, was more targeted than the nationwide ban that had lapsed, and that landscape had changed since the Supreme Court ruling because of the spread of the highly contagious Delta variant, which is killing fewer people in the state of Washington than fentanyl overdoses. The landlords accused Biden's administration of caving to political pressure and reinstating the moratorium, even though it knew it was illegal. Let's just give this a run anyway. Why wouldn't we do this? Law, legal, illegal. We've got a lot of problems going on here. The eviction moratorium. We got a lot of problems. Yeah. How about that thing over in Kabul? Not good. That is not working out well. Let's just buy ourselves a little time here because, we got our hands full. In light of the executive branch statement that its litigation efforts are designed to buy time to achieve its economic policy goals, and the fact that landlords are now subject to federal criminal penalties for exercising their property rights, depending on where they do business, applicants respectfully ask this court to issue relief as soon as possible, their lawyers told the Supreme Court. A lower court judge ruled earlier this month that the freeze is illegal, but rejected the landlord's request to lift the moratorium, saying her hands were tied by an appellate decision from the last time courts considered the eviction moratorium in the spring. So we have got the blind leading the blind on this bad boy. It's just a bunch of, well, I mean, these guys probably don't have the authority, but, oh, yeah, yeah, not good. Oh, we need an act of Congress to make, our hands are tied. We can't do anything over here. It's probably illegal, but, let's just run it up that flagpole and see how it does. It's flying. Yeah, it's flying. It's flying far enough, or it's flying enough for us to maybe get ahead of some of these other issues we've got going on. And maybe we'll be able to figure this out at a later time, because we need to buy ourselves some time, because this has been just so backwards. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said in a statement Friday that the rise of the Delta variant made the continuing moratorium vitally important. I thought that once everybody that wanted to got the vaccine, that we were on a different path here, but apparently that is not the story. I thought that, once the vaccine, yeah, you know where I'm headed. Hey, why don't you get the vaccine and then we can evict you and we shouldn't really have these issues, correct? Nobody wants to say that though, do they? No, they just want to continue down this narrative of coronavirus, eviction moratorium, legal. And she praised the appeals court decision. Psaki called on state and local officials to move more aggressively in distributing rental assistance funds and urged state and local courts to issue their own moratoriums to discourage eviction filings until landlords and tenants have sought the funds. Some tenants don't even know this is a thing. Some landlords don't even know this is a thing. It's a huge mess. The major issue here is we don't have the ability to get huge amounts of funds into the hands of those who need it, mainly the landlords who are owed thousands and thousands of dollars from individual tenants and millions of dollars collectively. We just don't have a mechanism to do that. I did a podcast last week kind of comparing how Snohomish County versus Pierce County versus King County, how they were all working through this progression. And since King County is so much bigger than these other small counties, the other small counties, they just kind of push their money out. And they've got like half of the money from the federal government already into the hands of tenants. King County, just a fraction of the money had been dispersed because they're working on a distribution system. They're working on a data set. They're reimagining and rethinking the wheel. And because they've got bigger numbers involved, it's not going that fast. It's just not going that fast. All right, so that's that article. I'm going to read a second one, which is landlords ask the Fifth Circuit Court to stay the CDC eviction moratorium. All right, so landlords in Louisiana are asking a federal appeals court to block the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's legally dubious nationwide eviction moratorium, while that court considers an appeal from the landlords. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention extended the moratorium earlier this Monday. We know all about that. We know about on August 3rd, the CDC basically just said, yep, October 3rd, we're going to kick that back out. We know about their, relying on the Delta variant as being a rapid acceleration of community transmission in the United States. And yet the hospitalization rates and those who are dying, fractional, isn't it? It's fractional compared to last go around, putting more Americans at increased risk, especially if they are unvaccinated. All right, well, how about you mandate the soon-to-be evicted and or the homeless? How about you mandate they get the vaccination? How about that? I don't know. You seem to be mandating everybody else. You're a teacher? Mandate. Yep. Government worker? Mandate. Cop? Oh, yeah. Mandate. This moratorium is the right thing to do to keep people in their homes and out of congregate settings where COVID-19 spreads. Here's the big thing. Just because you get evicted from your home doesn't mean you're homeless, doesn't mean you're in a congregate shelter. You can figure something else out. Lots of people do. That's just how this works. It's imperative that public health authorities act quickly to mitigate such an increase of evictions, which could increase the likelihood of new spikes in SARS-CoV-2 transmission, or maybe not. Such mass evictions and the attendant public health consequences would be very difficult to reverse. We just had, 380,000 people at Lollapalooza, and like 200 cases of the Rona came out of that? 200. We have proven that outdoors in congregate settings, this isn't happening. We've proven that. So crazy. The extension also came after Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh acknowledged, he said, it's probably not legal. CDC's exceeded its existing statutory authority. Never mind that whole thing. In that case, the High Court voted, we just talked about that. The landlords are represented by Pacific Legal Foundation, a public interest law firm headquartered in Sacramento, California. The CDC's eviction moratorium is illegal, and the Biden administration knows it, said attorney Luke Wake. They do know it. They've recognized it. Biden said it. This is not a public health measure, but a cynical bow to pressure from favored interest groups. I would have to say correct. The moratorium exists only because Justice Kavanaugh didn't vote to suspend it, and President Biden knows the CDC can get away with it enforcing it for now. How much longer? Beyond October 3rd? That's going to be a little tricky. The illegal moratorium is harming landlords in the housing market, and the courts need to put it to an end. Here, agreed. The case at hand, Chambliss Enterprises LLC versus Walensky, court file number whatever. It's pending before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. The lead defendant, Walensky, is CDC director and administrator of the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. The motion for injunction pending appeal was filed with the court August 18th. The court ordered the government to file a response by Monday, August the 23rd at 9 a.m. That is my time. That's a few hours ago, and I have not seen anything on that yet because I'm reading this to you on Monday, August the 23rd. As the moratorium is about to expire, there was a lot of pressure on the White House by people sleeping on the steps, White House to act unilaterally, and that's what they did, even though it may not have been legal. And the president came out and said that. President Biden employed a cynical, realpolitik calculus. He did. All right, we've got this issue. It's our issue. Can't get the money out. Don't really have a system. I'm told from these people over here that, it's not good if evictions happen because it might spread the Rona, even though that's not really based on the data or the science. So we're going to do this little tomfoolery / shenanigans over here. And, we may or may not get caught. It may or may not be illegal. But the good thing is that's going to take a bunch of time to work its way through the courts. And that's literally where we sit right now on a Monday, 23rd of August. It's where we sit, just waiting. The lawyer is very confident about his client's prospects in court. Well, okay. I am not confident about anything anymore. Are you? I mean, just all the stuff I read, and I sit here and I'm like, all right, so the president knows it's probably not legal, but that's what we're going with anyway. This makes no sense. It's all but certain that we're going to win, he said. I like this attorney. This guy has a positive mental attitude. PMA, strong. The force is strong with this one. The judicial writing is on the wall. The Supreme Court has made very clear that this moratorium is illegal. They probably have. And they did. The president even said, you know what? This may not be illegal. 4 federal district courts have ruled that the CDC lacks statutory authority to enact a moratorium on evictions, he said. Yes, since when did they have the power on evictions? Crazy. In a case brought by PLF Skyworks versus CDC, federal court in Ohio became the first court to rule that the agency lacked statutory authority to enact the eviction ban, he said. That ruling was issued March 10th. The Epoch Times reached out to the CDC for comment, but had not received a reply as of press time. Wah, wah, wah. Oh. I just want this moratorium to be lifted. When it does, I'm going to celebrate with you right here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Not because I want a bunch of people to lose, quote unquote, lose their homes. Not because I want a bunch of people to get evicted that don't deserve it. Because this whole thing has been so one-sided and so unfair from the get-go. Don't even get me started. This is just so unfair. It's just crazy. And yet it's what we're doing. All right. To be continued. I will continue this one for sure. Oh, just nutty. It's nutty that in 2021, this is how landlords have to deal with their properties. Let's see. All right, what's the new moratorium say? Can I actually do what I want with my own property, or am I limited again? Maybe this time even illegally. That's where we're at, right? Absolutely mind-blowing. And yet, kind of makes sense with everything else going on, right? Okay, that makes no sense at all. Perfect. Let's go. All right. That's it for me. I will follow up on this one because you know what? There's going to be follow-up. Until then, stay safe. Take care. We'll talk soon. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.